Contrary to popular belief, schizophrenia is not a disorder where someone has multiple personalities or is extremely violent, and it is not as stereotypically crazy as many people believe. Schizophrenia is actually a disorder where the relationships between thoughts, emotions, and behavior are broken. Because of this, a person will usually exhibit difficulty with communication and behavior patterns not commonly accepted by society. The disease is characterized by a loss of touch with reality, not the idea of having multiple personalities, which is what would be considered a dissociative identity disorder. Schizophrenia is instead a split of the mind and the behavior controlled by it. Psychosis, or loss of touch with reality, is the hallmark characteristic of schizophrenia. It is important to understand what exactly counts as psychosis. Most importantly, psychosis is not psychopathy. Psychopaths are typically unemotional and violent, but they don't lose touch with reality. A person with psychosis is affected in all manners, including cognitive and motor functions, along with social deficits. Psychosis can be found in other disorders, and you don't need to be schizophrenic to have psychosis. To fully understand the cultural impact of schizophrenia, it is important to be aware of the facts. The prevalence of schizophrenia in the United States is 1 in 100. It costs around $60 billion a year, including treatment and incarceration fees. The age of onset is late teens, early 20s, and, interestingly enough, it is more frequently seen in men. The age of onset is earlier in men, and symptoms are more severe in men. In order to properly categorize the disease, scientists have created 4 main types of schizophrenia. The first is disorganized, which is characterized by aimless babbling and giggling and childlike behavior. The second is catatonic, which is characterized by muscular rigidity and stupor, or random motor activity, hyperactivity, and incoherence. The third type is paranoid, in which the person experiences delusions of persecution or grandeur. And the last type is undifferentiated, which the person is clearly schizophrenic but doesn't fit into any of the other categories. When it comes to symptoms, schizophrenia can be broken down into 2 categories, positive and negative. Positive symptoms include things that shouldn't be there but are, and 50 to 70% of schizophrenic patients experience these. The 2 types of positive symptoms are delusions and hallucinations. Delusions can help illuminate how a person constructs meaning from the world in general. In other words, schizophrenic people develop delusions in order to explain why certain aspects of their lives have been assigned more importance than others. There are several types of delusions, including delusions of grandeur, where a person believes that they are greater or more famous than they actually are, delusions of persecution, which would be believing that the government or another agency like that is after you. Delusions of control, which is believing that someone is trying to brainwash you. Delusions of reference, which include believing that a song or a movie or another type of media is giving you a special message. And the last type of delusion is thought blocking or insertion, which is when a person believes that there is an outside force messing with their minds by either blocking or placing thoughts into their mind. The second type of positive symptoms seen in schizophrenic patients are hallucinations, which are intrusive sensory experiences in the absence of sensory stimulations. These can include anything from hearing voices to seeing things that aren't really there to feeling like something is crawling around beneath your skin. The other type of symptoms seen in schizophrenic patients are what are referred to as negative symptoms, otherwise known as things that should be there but are not. 25% of schizophrenic patients experience negative symptoms. There are 4 different types of negative symptoms. The first is abolition, or an apathy and inability to engage in activities of daily living. Alogia, which is absence of speech and difficulty in communicating. Anhedonia, which is lack of pleasure in normally pleasurable activities. And finally, affective flattening, or lack of normal expressed emotions.